Hey, how's it going everybody? Swagkage here, and today, once again, brought my pal 6 with me. You can introduce yourself again if you want.
Hello, we're gonna go over Minato versus Shisui.
So, people match them up all the time, right? And I get comments like every day, so who would win, Minato versus Shisui? People tweet it at me all the time, and I see other people getting asked this all the time. It's just like a really popular matchup. Let's start with like all the positive stuff for him. Now, before we go any further, I'd just like to take a quick break on behalf of today's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Most of you have probably at least already heard the name by now, since it's been around for, at the time of this video's release, 3.5 years and is still going strong. For those of you who don't already know, Raid's a turn-based RPG that takes place in a dark fantasy setting and is available for download on PC and mobile platforms. It's completely free to play, and at least in my opinion, is one of the best-looking mobile games on the market right now. I first started playing it last October and have been actively engaged with it ever since. Probably because it's really easy to pick up and play whenever I need something to do, and I also just generally tend to like fantasy aesthetics and turn-based combat. Believe me when I say that there is like always stuff to do in the game. There are like a billion different characters to unlock and level up, and it's constantly being updated with new content and features. As a matter of fact, a recent boss that just got added to the game is one of the craziest I've ever played against, like not just in Raid, but in any game period. It's this 6-headed Hydra where all of the different heads are like 6 unique boss battles, but you have to fight all of them together at the same time. All the heads have different names and a different gimmick, like the head of Blight will try to poison you and steal your health, the head of Mischief will take all the buffs that your support characters apply to your team and then apply them to the rest of the Hydra heads. The head of Wrath will just melt through your whole party with ridiculous damage, and that's without even mentioning the other 3, the head of Torment, the head of Suffering, and the head of Decay. There's also a ton happening in Raid this month, like the addition of a bunch of new champions, and a brand new faction war script for one of my favorite factions, the Shadowkin. It's going to be amazing, and I can't wait for the crypt to open up so I can dive in and see what it's all about. Honestly, now's as good a time to get started with the game as any, and if you use my link in the description or scan my QR code on the screen, you'll get a free starter pack worth about $30 to kickstart your game. That includes a free champion named Terrell, 200k silver, an energy refill, an XP boost, and an ancient shard so you can summon an awesome champion as soon as you get in game. All this treasure will be waiting for you here in your gift box, but these rewards will only be available for the next 30 days and only to new players. So to any potential newcomers, I wish you the best of luck, and thanks again to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. Now we can't use the manga because
He doesn't do anything. He's not there.
He is totally featless in the manga. He basically doesn't exist. He's like a lore entity, if anything, right? Like people talk about him and the things that he did, but it's all very vague.
Yeah, Shisui's maximum participation in the manga is literally just giving his eye to Itachi. Other than that, like from at least the original manga itself, we get like he ran into Al some time ago during like the Third War, and they fought, like he fought his platoon and he like scared Al a bit. And I think that's why people ask about Shisui a lot, is because they're looking for information.
And well, the other thing too is there are a lot of different versions of what happened to him. Like they're not all congruent with each other, right? The anime, Storm Revolution, and the novel all tell a different version of the same story. Most of it is pretty similar, but the fight with Danzo is always like
different,
wildly different. Like if we use anime filler for this matchup, then like Minato is way stronger and Shisui is way weaker. So this is just like a horrible stomp.
Because in the anime, the confrontation with Danzo just goes like Shisui genjutsu's Danzo because he's like doing some fishy shit. And then Danzo uses Izanagi to get out of the genjutsu. And he like knees Shisui in the chin, and Shisui like flies up in the air and he just rips his eye out. It gets a bit better in the game. Yeah, so they like fight each other in the game like back and forth for a while, and they're like kind of tired at the end. And you can maybe even imply like in the game Shisui's holding back on Danzo because he doesn't bring out the MS or the Susanoo during the fight, but he still fights him to like fatigue, at least in his Tsurutomo state. So it doesn't really matter. Just like in all of the renditions, the fight with Danzo is the end for him.
Like I was saying, the best version of the fight for him is the novel, because Shisui doesn't actually fight Danzo head on there. He gets poisoned, and it's poisoned from one of the members of the Aburame clan. And one of the secondary effects of this poison is paralysis, so he's totally unable to move. That's good for him, because that tells us he's not as weak as like pre-Sharingan Danzo, which would just be horrible for him. In that case, Shisui would get obliterated by Minato.
Yeah. Not only would he get obliterated by Minato, he'd get obliterated by people like Itachi, MS Sasuke. He'd get obliterated by later Danzo for sure.
Oh yeah, easily. I don't think that this interpretation is necessarily inconsistent, and use it to construct a sort of picture of what Shisui might have looked like at full power. I think the most impressive thing is there's this plan that the Uchiha clan makes where they want to go kidnap Hiruzen, and the person that they want to have like break into the Hokage manor, which makes this even more impressive because I imagine that it would be guarded by a bunch of other ninja, and just go into Hiruzen's office and kidnap him and take him hostage.
Yep.
The book specifically mentions they planned on using Shisui's body flicker to do this, which means that the Uchiha clan at least thinks he's fast enough to capture the third Hokage.
Even when Danzo gets the Sharingan, you can sort of imply he doesn't think he's at Hiruzen's level. So definitely like pre-Sharingan Danzo should not be at Hiruzen's level, so Shisui shouldn't be losing to someone of that tier.
If you want to go this route, you have to assume then that Shisui is above Danzo, which again, like we said, for the purposes of this video is fine. Danzo actually says this himself, that Itachi and Shisui are just like the best, strongest members of the Uchiha clan.
So the context behind it as well is that they're saying that if they win Shisui and Itachi over, like in this supposedly upcoming war with the Uchiha clan, that they'll just win the war because they'll have the two strongest Uchiha on their side.
It's up to you whether or not you agree with the implication that Fugaku was maybe fit to be Hokage, definitely at least Kage level. Knowing that, it's fair to reason then that maybe it actually does make sense if Shisui is stronger than him, that he would be fast enough to do what they were going to need him to do for this plan, where they were going to have him capture Hiruzen.
And we're just talking about like in terms of a combatant, right? Obviously, because like nothing implies, at least from what we've mentioned, that Shisui should be able to like punch Hiruzen in his stomach and like knock him out or something like that.
Yeah.
But he's definitely got the speed to be up there, and then he's just like an Uchiha with crazy genjutsu. So like overall, he should just be like around that tier, like upper Sani, something like that.
Itachi, throughout both of the novels, he thinks that Shisui is better than him, looks up to him, wants to be as strong as him. This is also implied in the game pretty much right before Shisui dies. The narrative does seem to imply that Shisui is like around like this level of power. It's fairly nebulous, but I feel like understanding this, if I assume that Shisui is actually this strong based on all these things, I have a pretty good idea of who he could and couldn't beat.
And it's not Minato.
Yeah, exactly.
So the main reason why is, like we just discussed, Shisui's like upper Sani, like around that tier, right? And then we get to Jiraiya. And Jiraiya, when he's talking to Tsunade, this is like during the search for Tsunade arc, it's like the first time they find Tsunade. He's telling Tsunade that basically it's like a whole double spread of Jiraiya just jerking off Minato. He's literally like, yeah, Minato's capacity as shinobi is just unmatched. Everybody compels in comparison to Minato, just jerking him off. So it's like Jiraiya, who in base is like around Orochimaru and Hiruzen's level, he's got Sage mode, and on top of that, he still just pales in comparison to Minato. So right there, that's just blatant like ABC. Minato is way stronger than someone like Shisui.
I mean, there are a whole lot of other ways that you can illustrate this too, right? Like if you want to assume that Jiraiya is just like biased or whatever, he doesn't actually know what he's talking about. Most people I think agree that Sage Naruto was stronger than Sage Jiraiya, and Pain was stronger than Sage Naruto was. When Naruto starts talking to Minato in his mind, when Minato seals the Nine Tails back up, Minato looks at Pain and he's like, so this guy's really strong, but this Madara guy is like way stronger than him, and you're gonna have to like master the Nine Tails if you want to beat that guy. And this guy that Minato's talking about isn't somebody that gave him any trouble, by the way, mind you. Minato, like, what he did to Obito was filthy. It was like a one and done, one tap, and then Obito just ran away. He got hit by one Rasengan and then just gave up. Like the whole reason Obito went to the village was in order to get the Nine Tails and start controlling it. So you'd imagine that he'd be doing everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't lose the Nine Tails. And like the first thing Minato does after touching him is just like freeze the Nine Tails from his control, right? It's like really bad. So even if Shisui is like at or somewhat above Hiruzen in terms of strength, like there are so many more pegs on this totem pole that are all above him that it's like...
Yeah, it's literally just saying like Minato has a much higher quality of scaling over Hiruzen than Shisui can ever dream of, right? And like keep in mind, we're being generous to Shisui here, like putting him this high, just like using only novel things, like assuming the novel is like the canon way to interpret everything. So it's not like, you know, it's not like this is like concrete or anything. Minato is just much higher than Shisui, even at his best, is what's trying to be conveyed.
Yeah, because the thing is, you don't have to make any assumptions to put Minato above all of those people. And with Shisui, you have to be like, well, I guess it would make sense because of these other things. But this idea that he's like Hiruzen level is like only supported by all the things that I've mentioned so far, if you kind of agree with the position to begin with, you know?
Yeah, or maybe like Shisui was gonna run into Hiruzen's house while like obviously Hiruzen's off guard, and maybe like genjutsu him, knock him out and take him out the manor or something like that. There's a tons of ways to interpret that to not mean Shisui scales over Hiruzen, just like the best way is what we were giving him, that's all.
The best thing that Shisui has going for him in this matchup is Kotoamatsukami. But I think that people really, really overhype that jutsu because of the whole you can use it without eye contact thing. Like,
yes,
obviously that's really good, right? But I don't think that means that he can just think of anyone he wants on the whole planet and then just activate it and then they'll do whatever he tells them.
Yeah, like there should obviously be a range, right? Like Shisui doesn't have omnipresent genjutsu or something like that.
And on top of that, I don't even feel like it's like, you would have to prove that it's just like a blanket AoE thing for me to believe that, because I feel like it's reasonable to assume he'd have to at least know where the person is.
How do we say it can even like tag Minato before Minato like stabs Shisui in the stomach or something? Because Minato already fights extremely bloodlusted, right? Like Minato doesn't play around in his fights. He literally just tries to end them as quick as possible. Like he was literally going to like pile drive a kunai through the top of B's skull. He's gonna do the same thing to Raikage. He slammed the Rasengan in Obito's back, then stabbed him in the kidney. Like he doesn't joke around in fights. And Shisui doesn't open fights with Kotoamatsukami. Like Shisui literally never does something like that. So if we take the game thing, right, like with Danzo, like Shisui fought Danzo the whole time in 3 Tomo, never even thought to bring out Kotoamatsukami. So like, what's he gonna do?
Yeah, if you assume that the fight happens and like both of them are in character, it's really weird to jump to like, oh yeah, he just uses Kotoamatsukami. And I think by the time that he realizes it's a necessity, he would just lose. But even if you assume that it's like a bloodlusted Shisui, I just think that Minato's too fast. So like a good example of this sort of thing is like Sasuke fights B and starts losing and doesn't use genjutsu on B until he gets a very, very clear opportunity to. Like he gets a good look at B's eye and then pops it, right?
Like he might send the Kotoamatsukami out, and then by the time it gets there, Minato's not even in that spot anymore.
And I mean, the thing about Koto is like, I still don't even properly understand how it works, right? Like, there are a million different ways to interpret it. Because, like, Shisui apparently used it on all sorts of people in the war and stuff. And, like, everybody thinks that it's, like, so scary. But then it also has, like, a 10-year cooldown. So, like, is that, like, one of his eyes? Or is that what happens when you use it when you're not him?
So in the anime anyway, whenever Mifune, or they find out Mifune is under Kotoamatsukami, they literally break him out the way you break anyone out of a genjutsu. They literally they place their hands on him, give him chakra, disrupts the flow, and he breaks him out of Kotoamatsukami. In the manga, you may be able to imply Mifune broke himself out because that scene is just not there, but he's clearly not in Kotoamatsukami for the rest of his life, so... So, like, what's really implied is that Shisui is just like the boy who could have been, right? Like, he's like this crazy prodigy who just didn't get to live up to everything he wanted to because of like his unfortunate run-in with Danzo, and just due to being so powerful, he was like targeted.
Yeah.
But it's not implied he's like of the tier we're talking about at this time. Maybe full potential, like perfect Susanoo Shisui would like just slap up Minato, right? Like he just beat him up badly. But the Shisui we got, he's just not up there.
In conclusion, Minato beats him up. Shisui is strong, definitely. Well, if you are generous to him, he's definitely stronger than a lot of people treat him. But he's just not on that like Minato legendary like 4th Hokage level. As always, thanks for watching, everybody, and until next time, take care. Bye.